Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Historical Humans Reacts. And on today's episode, we're talking about the Boston Museum of Fine Arts and how they plan on addressing a controversial statue of an indigenous American man reaching out and appealing to the Great Spirit. And one of the reasons this is controversial is because it is a false portrayal of Native American man, and it is welcoming them to land that was stolen. And one of the ways the museum is trying to fight against this and trying to keep the statue on display, but maybe reimagine how it's interpreted, is by actually allowing other artists to appeal the statue, to recontextualize it, to put it into a proper context that will allow a more accurate interpretation, a more accurate representation. And I like how they approached it, because what they did is they invited an indigenous artist to actually do the art piece. Artist Alan Michelson, a Mohawk member of the Six Nations of the Grand River, will be the first in a series to create a temporary exhibit to appeal, and his is titled The Knowledge Keeper, which will be unveiled later this year. So quite exciting,
Yeah,
quite a lot going on there.
yeah, it's very exciting, and this is definitely something that the museum here, the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, has struggled with for years, attempting to understand what this statue is, why it's out here, and what it's doing. The artist, the Mohawk artist that they got here, Michelson, actually does lay out very nicely in this article the major concerns surrounding it. Even just ignoring the general play, the general insensitivities that you noted at first, Justin. Just straight up, why is there a statue of a plains rider in front of the Museum of Fine Arts? Why is the rider wearing a war bonnet but unarmed? Why is a plains rider wearing a Navajo necklace? And why is he supplicating? Effectively, just the internal inconsistencies of the statue, really just going around showing that whoever made this had a vision of the indigenous people of America as a monolithic single culture, and not as the many, many distinct nations that they were. And you know, that is the source of about half the problems with this statue.
The other half come from when it was actually cast, and it was a
Oh yeah.
part of a very popular vanishing race trope that was depicted of a lot of indigenous Americans at the time. So what they're doing is actually, I think, quite an interesting twist on things, because there is a certain validity in trying to keep historical items and trying to keep the history alive while maybe correcting them. So I really like that this is a recapitulation of it, a regenesis of this artwork, and honestly, it's something that they're allowing indigenous artists to reimagine. And Michelson himself was raised in Boston, going to the museum all the time, and would question the statue. And it's interesting, it's very unique to see how they're approaching this. And in 2019, the museum itself invited community members to give their input on the statue, and it acknowledged that there were certain issues with cultural appropriation, public monuments, and indigenous erasure. Um, and this was backed by a lot of anonymous, or by different visitors, not anonymous, but it's anonymous in the article, where they said they hate the statue and would use a back entrance just to avoid it, because it's not, the museum isn't for native people.
Yeah, I think, in addition to what the museum is doing now with, giving giving it to indigenous people as a platform for additional voices, for, additional art, for all these things that the museum is doing, it serves, I think, a very valid historical purpose if we were to take it off its current pedestal and put it, say, inside the museum, of just look at this statue. Look at all the things that they did wrong attempting to depict a Native American. This is what happens when you don't talk to people. Look at how silly these mistakes are. This is like a to-do list of how not to depict, how not to depict another people.
And
I think it has that like learning reference guide value of just here's how not to do it.
and the museum, to their credit, has attempted in the past and very recently to try and counter a lot of these past ideals. One of which was by actually planting corn and indigenous plants around the statue to kind of serve as that counter proposal. So it is a very interesting counter take, and I respect it. I think it's kind of out of the box thinking. I think you're right. They could take it down. They could change it, but you are taking down a certain icon, and I don't know. It's this reclamation. It's not this erasure of history, because if you take the statue down, people are going to cry erasure, even though the statue is commemorating the erasure of the people, and it's a recursive argument any way you cut it. But
yeah. My point was like, do what the Field Museum did with Sue. We're gonna move it to a different gallery and give it its little plaque about when the statue was put up and all the things that are inconsistent with all the concerns that Michelson raised and other members of the community raised during the anonymous Q&A between them and the museum. Just have like we could change the context around it, like the museum is doing with the outside now. Like I'm not saying smelt it down or hide it in the basement. I'm just saying change its context.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that is a very good point. Like, no, we do not destroy the statue. Because how to do things wrong is still a useful guide, because you can see how wrong people get.
It is very interesting, and it's a way to kind of reevaluate the past in a modern context, and I think that's something that a lot of institutions are currently struggling with. I think this is a unique, creative approach to that, and I think that's why you see like the Museum of Natural History in New York and the Field Museum and all these other institutions closing down large exhibits because of NAGPRA and the Native American Graves and Protection Act. I think we're starting to see a different approach to museology and museum studies, which is long overdue. I think massively so. And clearly, I think a lot of our indigenous counterparts here also feel the same about that. So it's good to see them get a win in this context and to see a positive outcome coming from such a negative icon. But I think that's enough of my ramble here. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next one.